Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello and welcome to On the Aisle with yours truly, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's episode is Mariel Greenlee Lungo, a former Dance Kaleidoscope performer who is now a choreographer and artistic director of Dance Council Indy. Join me now as I go on the aisle with Mariel. Welcome, Mariel. I'm so happy that you are here with me in the studios at Channel A for the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. Well, I love to invite friends, and as you know, I've been around for a while, and I've met many artists. You know, artists are my purpose and my passion, advocating for artists, and you're certainly on that list. So let's talk about our history together first, and then we'll get into the Indy Dance Council, which you founded, and I'm really excited to hear more about it. So first of all, tell me, when did we meet?
Honestly, I can't remember. I think it was a long time ago as a dancer in DK is the first time I met you.
Mm-hmm. You know, I interviewed you a couple times at least.
I remember.
I'll help refresh your memory. As you know, I've been here a really long time, and from the DK's inception. So that means that I've covered it most of the time. I've been an arts journalist, I think from the very beginning. And of course, you know that I know the founders, Ginger and Cherry. And of course, you know, I followed that era. And then, of course, when David Hochoy came to town, I interviewed him right after he arrived, and we remain friends to this day. And so, of course, you know, during the David Hochoy years, you were there. When did you arrive? Tell me your history with DK.
I started with DK in January of 2005, and I retired at the end of October in 2019. Mm-hmm. So I danced from age 24 to 39. And
tell our listeners about your background. Where did you come from, and how is it that you came to Dance Kaleidoscope?
I'm originally from upstate New York, and I would say that's sort of where I fell in love with dancing. I went to college at Point Park University in Pittsburgh, and then I moved to New York City and did the obligatory work in a restaurant audition for anyone that you can fit into your schedule and see what happens. And I had a few great experiences. It was probably one of my favorite year and a half of life. And my first big job was with Dance Kaleidoscope. So I auditioned for David at the Graham School and moved here sight unseen about a month later.
Wow, sight unseen. Did you know anything about Indy?
No.
And would it have to do with, I mean, you're coming here, was it based on David, his reputation, and the fact that you auditioned at the company that he used to dance for? I'm sure that occurred to you that this guy was a big deal, right?
Yeah, I had auditioned for Dance Kaleidoscope once during the middle of college, and I remember very clearly they were using a piece of rep called Heart of Joy, which was a beautiful, rich, lyrical kind of piece to Philip Glass music, and I enjoyed the movement so much that they remained on my radar. Mm-hmm. So then when I saw that they were holding auditions at the Martha Graham School in New York, I was like, well, give it a second try. And I got a job.
So the first time you auditioned, was it with Sherry and Ginger?
No, it was still with David.
And how was that to be rejected that first time?
Well, you have to, as an artist, you have to learn how to navigate rejection with grace and a growth mindset, because there are opportunities out there that you might not dream of for yourself that you wouldn't imagine. And you have to stay open to that, because something that's even better suited towards your talents and strengths might be out there. So, yeah.
That's a great attitude. Who instilled that in you, or how did you learn that?
I think from being rejected.
Yeah, I mean, I wondered if you had teachers in your training or your background that influenced you along those lines.
Not really. My parents were not dancers. My mom is Cuban, and she was our elementary school computer teacher back in the days of Carmen Sandiego and Oregon Trail. And my dad was an Army guy. I danced since I was 3. I think I actually potty trained in order to dance. My older sister was in a dance class that I would watch with my face pressed to the glass. And apparently I learned the entire dance through the window. And the teacher told my mother if she could potty train me, then I could join the class, even though I was young for the age group. And I think I was potty trained 2 days later.
That's so interesting. I mean, I've heard that from a number of dancers, actually, that it was an older brother or sister who was in dance class or a dancer. Or, you know, they were influenced by watching them or going to the dance classes with their parents or whatever. So did your sister go on by any chance?
No, she lost interest the second I got started.
I hear that too, as well, that those siblings who were the influence, you know, they didn't go on. And then the ones behind them became pros. I find that fascinating. So what was your training when you started at 3?
Pretty much anything under the sun. I was an energetic kid. My childhood nickname was Jumpy. You knew which chair was mine at the kitchen table because all of the joints were loose because I wiggled so much. I trained at literally anything that I could come across.
Did you go to a school, like a dance school?
I did.
Early on?
I went to the local dance school. It was called the Dance Shop with Miss Sue, and I took everything they offered. And probably around 6th grade, my dad lost his job, and my mom wanted to pull me from lessons or reduce the lessons I was taking. And the dance teacher said, "Oh, just let her stay. She's falling in love. Don't take it away from her." Mm-hmm. She started ripping up my mom's checks, and then they advertised that they needed a cleaning lady on the weekend. And so my mom approached her and said, "Well, let us do that. It's the least we can do." So then my mom and I cleaned the dance studios, and then eventually I just cleaned the dance studios. And then I started taking classes on Saturday mornings at the ballet, like official ballet conservatory school in my hometown. That was different because I was doing tap, jazz, ballet, lyrical, all the things. And I wanted to supplement my ballet training because I'd gone to see my first Nutcracker, and I went to Ithaca Ballet with my friend's little sister for the summer and realized I was the 15-year-old in the 11-year-olds class, and I had a lot of catching up to do as far as ballet technique was concerned. And so then we I think the gossiping moms talked to each other, and the ballet studio offered us a cleaning scholarship there as well. So then we were cleaning 2 dance studios, and I was dancing every spare minute I had, as well as, by then I'm in the middle of high school. So I might have been grounded once or twice, and I would take about 4 or 5 hours to clean the dance studio on the weekend and play all my favorite tunes and have my own flash dance moment.
Well, I presume the working and taking classes in the same place, that must have been where you developed your work ethic.
and my mom and my dad, everybody was pretty hard workers.
Tell me about I knew that you had Cuban heritage, but I never heard the story about which wave did your mother arrive here from Cuba? As there were several, as I recall, from the Revolution on.
Yeah, so they
not 3 or 4, yeah.
Right. They originally fled around 1960, and I think they first went to Puerto Rico and then eventually to Spain. And then my family, because I think they sent the women and children out first, and then they sent the men out separately because my great-grandfather apparently would spin reels of Castro's broadcasts in the basement of his business and dub over with his own commentary. They were worried that he would get taken, so they all met up in Puerto Rico. I think that's where my grandfather's extended family stayed, and then my family moved to Spain for a few years, and then they came into the States through my grandfather, worked for what was Maersk at the time, a cargo shipping company that was global. So they were moving around to different port towns throughout that period of time in my family's history, and they came in through New Jersey and settled in New Orleans.
Oh, that's fascinating. So how did your parents meet?
My mother's cousin went to West Point with my father, and my mom went to visit her cousin, and there he was.
That is so cool. How romantic, huh? So was it tough for her to adapt? Did she learn English quickly, or was it some time?
I think she came to the States already knowing English. I think that as a student, she studied, I think she was raised by the nuns, and so she studied English, Spanish, Latin, Italian at some point. She used to speak lots of languages. I think now we're down to just Spanish and English, maybe a little bit of Italian.
As someone raised Catholic and went to Catholic schools, grade school and high school, looking back, I wasn't crazy about all that rigid strictness and all, but I did get a good education. So I have to thank those sisters. We had Sisters of St. Francis. They were all about reading, writing, and arithmetic, for sure, the 3 R's.
I remember she won't drink root beer because it tastes like the cough syrup the nuns used to give her. And certain other references. But between her and I think the Army dad, they raised, my sister and I are both pretty big rule followers.
Now, are you bilingual? I guess I don't know. Are you?
I'm not. No. I'm not fluent.
Okay.
I could recite a few prayers for you that are just stuck in my memory, and I can follow conversation. When people speak Spanish around me, I usually understand what's going on generally, but I don't have the vocabulary to...
Is there a reason why you didn't learn Spanish?
Well, when we were choosing languages was when I was falling madly in love with ballet, and I chose French so that I could learn the terminology of all of the dance moves.
Uh-huh. So did your mother speak it in the home at all?
Mostly just on the phone to her family.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because I don't speak Spanish fluently. I grew up with parents who didn't want us to learn for a variety of reasons. Mostly they were afraid that we would be discriminated against. We had
I've heard
accents, as simple as that. They couldn't have known. They weren't that educated. But in any case, so I often wonder, did you ever feel that not being fluent disconnects you from your people, Latinos in general, or not?
I would say a little bit, only because, and I've talked to my mother and to, if you know Iris Rosa, at length about should I, when you fill out paperwork, should I be claiming that I'm Hispanic or not? Because I don't want anyone to consider including me as counting, how do I explain? I move through the world as a white woman, so I don't encounter any of the hardships that I would if I was more...
You don't fit the stereotype.
Well, I just...
Physically.
Yeah.
Because there's a stereotype that all Latinos are dark-skinned.
Right. Right, but then...
Yeah, people have no clue about, Mexico, most of Latin America, European, Spanish influence.
Right. And I think I never really knew if being 50%, not 100%, and then also not being fluent, if that was enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's that. That's a whole discussion of the so-called percentage and the litmus test,
Sure.
I have people who say to me, well, you don't look Mexican. And I say, well, what does Mexican look like to you? What does that mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, I digress, but of course I was brought up bicultural, so do you feel a connection to your Cuban heritage? Does it interest you, the music, culture, history?
I do. I went through a phase in my 20s where I read any book I could get my hands on that took place in Latin America. My infatuation with music and moving, and it's, yeah.
So do you think it's in your blood, your cells?
100%, yeah.
That's what I'm getting at, because I'm there, It's, it's in my blood somehow, my sangre,
Yeah, my Cuban grandmother, we called her Bueli, short for abuela. She would always say, oh, you get that from us, from me.
Yeah. Well, I could see how it could influence you as an artist, the movement based on the music. And, it's just, why do you think that is that? But it's not just Hispanics, Latinos. It's part of the stereotype, I guess, that we got natural rhythm, Do you think there's truth to that? And does that come from?
My mother claims that she has none, but I have seen my grandmother cut a rug in the living room. So I don't know.
Okay. So let's talk about the DK years, Dance Kaleidoscope. So, what a rich history that you underwent. And, I know for as long as you were there, dancers come and go, right? And just when you bond with everybody, then there are these changes that occur, right? Mm-hmm. But you went through, I'm sure it's hard for you to distinguish, but were you with the same core? Was there a core in David's different, shall we say, companies over his years? Was yours together for a long time, would you say? It seems to me, as someone who covered you guys, that there was.
There was a large handful of us that worked together for a very long time.
And who were they? Let's give them a shout out.
Well, I just saw them all over the weekend. We get together on a regular basis.
Really?
Not like very often, but...
Are they local, but they come in from other places?
Most, but not all, are local. So I joined the company with Melanie Schreiber, and Jill Godwin was already in the company, and Libby Harris was already in the company, Brittany Edwards, Brandon Comer. I'm trying to think of everyone in order. Tim June, Zach Young. Then the next wave would have been Justin Sears and Emily Dyson and Alexa Lukasevich. Wow. And I'm using their maiden names because that's what I associate with that time. Who else?
I recognize all those names. I was thinking today, I've probably seen most of your body of work with Dance Kaleidoscope.
Probably. There's a lot of people that I think... there's a lot of audience of Dance Kaleidoscope that is truly loyal and has been with them for decades. And I feel like a lot of those guys kind of watched me grow up on stage.
Well, I guess I could say that too. And the thing is that I associate you with some of David's classics, when they, when he would revive them, and hopefully they'll still continue to, and there's every indication that they're going to. They have a great appreciation, understanding for his legacy and the work that he created. So it's a great tribute to him that he will live on, his work will live on. Carmina Burana, as
it's a rite of passage as a DK dancer.
And let's recall, what are some of the pieces that you dance in which you would consider David Hochoy classics? There's so many.
Yeah, there are so many.
Let's just say, what are the ones that are nearest and dearest to your heart you appeared in, and you often were a lead?
Probably my favorites would be, in no particular order, Carmina, Iconoglass, Madame Butterfly, Heart of Joy, Romeo and Juliet, Losing My Mind, Farewell. I loved Ellington.
Was there a concert, Puccini's People?
Puccini People that's a beautiful, theatrical, heartbreaking, Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, those that you just mentioned, they're alone, and the fact that you can't recall all of them,
Yeah.
says a lot about how prolific David was.
He's an icon.
And they stand to the test of time. That's why they can be revived like other masters' work, right?
I mean, there's certain themes, experiences of being a human that don't age.
Okay, well, I mean, of course, talking about Dance Kaleidoscope and David and your being a dancer with him at that time, we can't escape the fact that working with him, what was that like?
He had a way of pulling things out of you. He instilled in me that you do learn something more intimately through repetition. The first several years I was in the company, we spent 4 months of the year as the resident dance company of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival out in Ashland.
Oh, my goodness.
And in those years, you would learn 2 45-minute productions, and you would perform them over the course of the summer. By the end of the summer, I think each show you would have performed 36 times or something close to that. And there are important discoveries and character work and spontaneous moments of growth that happen in the moment on show number 26 and a half, that there's no...
It's like an actor who performs on Broadway. They can do something different they find something different, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're learning...
Similar to that, yeah.
There are the calculated parts of like how hard to push off when you jump and things like that. But as all of that becomes more and more reflexive, you're not thinking about it. Your body knows what to do.
So there is such a thing as muscle memory.
Oh, for sure.
Explain that to people listening who don't know what that means for a dancer, at least.
Muscle memory is when a pattern of movement becomes so second nature, it doesn't take up any of your like cognitive brain space. So your mind becomes very free to respond to variables in the moment and also dig into the art and the story. It's very clearly evident if you ever watch a dancer or a choreographer hear a song that they've danced to or watch other dancers perform a piece that they've danced to, your muscles will literally twitch in sympathy because it remembers what it felt like to do that.
Oh, interesting. And also, when you've got the movement down, the muscle memory, it leaves you an opportunity then to expand on the acting part.
100%.
Your character, right? The one thing I was always struck with, and I'm still struck with, David's dancers, and I don't know if he consciously looks for, well, there's musicality, right? He looks for people who have musicality, but also he has always chooses dancers, in my mind, that are great actors too, really good actors.
Well, I think some of that comes from the Martha Graham lineage. She was around at the same time as Stanislavski and all of that. But there's a fabulous quote from her that I'm not going to get right, but something about we practice by, you learn how to live by living, and you learn how to, anyway, I can't think of it right now, but.
I don't know, and I'm asking you, but prior to that in dance history, there wasn't that much emphasis on acting, apart from the dancing, or not. And if there was it more melodramatic in the old days?
I'm sure it just depends on the style of dance. There's dance comes from so many different cultures and serves so many different purposes, largely preserving and telling stories. So I would imagine that it does. I can't think of a specific example. When we think of like American dance history, a lot of stuff came out of, there's the vaudeville movement, but then still so much of it was born of the moment of people and culture, of hardship, of...
Yeah. Well, I just wondered if there was a time when dancers chewed the scenery with their acting, the melodrama, like I said.
Yeah, I would think that's true for some styles, but not all.
Today's audiences will say, well, God, they're really corny. I mean, that's really corny as opposed to natural.
Right. I know there was some phenomenal slapstick stuff that came out of the Depression.
Yeah. So you learned a lot during those years, and how would you say how much did you grow? I don't know, it's hard to quantify, but in your own mind, how would you say, how much was your growth? Again, you couldn't quantify it, could you?
Yeah, I don't know. There's two things in play. There's the body. You train and you train and you train and you reach this level of like peak mastery of technique, and when you feel like you are at your strongest, and then there's age and it starts to create wear and tear, and then you can't leap the same way when you're 40 that you can when you're 20. You can't, but you become so much more skilled at how to spend what you have available to you. So that's like a different trajectory. And then there's the artist, and I think everyone becomes a better artist the longer they live.
You also learn to leave enough gas in the tank, right?
I always thought it was interesting how you would feel about a Friday night opening night versus a Sunday show, especially, for example, for a show like Carmina Burana, where I remember there was one year that we performed Carmina, that I was living with my husband, and he said the water bill went up because I took a hot bath every morning to get loose so that I could move, and I took an ice bath every night to try to control the damage done that day. And that was probably for 3 weeks, so it was a lot of baths all of a sudden.
That's funny. Talk to me about the bonding with your fellow dancers, and what that was like.
So I have a funny way of explaining this. If you take people that work a job together in an office and what those parameters are, well, if you take away all of the furniture and put them in one room together, and then they're pretty much half naked, wearing only spandex, you get to know each other really well because there's nothing to hide behind, or you are working under reasonably extreme conditions. You see people how they work when they're sick, when they're tired, when they're brokenhearted, when they're ecstatic, when they're down and out, and we all have seasons of life. And so there is something, dancers learn how to communicate with body language really effectively because we're not a very verbal culture. So there's memes about this where you can have a whole conversation with your bestie at the ballet bar just by looking at each other. You can talk about the moment, what you're doing later that day, or, inside jokes that happen exclusively through eye contact. But you become very sensitive to everybody's body language, and you kind of learn to know each other in this specific way. And in reverse, they know you just as intimately. And so you really are just practicing being vulnerable together on an unusually large amount of time.
Ironically, when I was in my car coming to the studio, I love listening to Broadway tunes. That's just my thing. I can't get enough of it. But what came up, chorus line, what I did for love. And since I was going to be talking with you, how close is that musical to the truth, or your experience? And when I say truth, it dramatized, what it takes to be a dancer, the disappointments, the joy, the love, all of that stuff. And, I think it was, I really do think it was brilliantly written. What do you think?
I agree. I think it's very brilliantly written. I think that when you care about something a lot, obviously it affects you all the more deeply. So there's that aspect. And, a lot of...
You talked about the rejection, and a lot of the show is just about that in the opening, right?
Sure. And yeah, there's little seeds of truth. Is it like a realistic depiction of what everyone experiences? No, but...
And even the ones where they have abuse or trauma in their background. It's like comedians, they always say about comedians, they use all of that pain in their acts in comedy, but the same with dancers and actors.
Yeah, there are shreds of truth in all of it.
Yeah, it's the way they survive, right? You can express. Okay, so at one point you decided that your body couldn't do it anymore, I presume.
Well, yeah. I was one of those. I was never, I can't imagine ever wanting to walk away or, change seasons. It was like the center of life for such a long time. But
how do you do that? How did you do it?
Well, Martha Graham actually does say it is, every dancer dies twice. The first death is when they stop dancing, and the second death is their actual death. But it is a huge shift, and honestly, I attribute some of it to, they've come out with these like fantastic medical journal articles showing the biological benefit of dance. So it's good for you physically, it's good for you emotionally, it's good for you mentally, to the point that it really does affect you down to the cellular level. The endorphins, the hormones, everything is affected by a good dance party. I'm kidding, but I'm not. Like it really is such. I think it was even ranked more therapeutic than running. People talk about like a runner's high or how addictive running can be. It's dance is a really powerful, really cathartic.
It's addictive.
Yeah, you experience it in lots of different ways. People talk about dancing through emotion or expressing. So there's a lot of layers to it. And so when you're used to having this essentially like healthy coping mechanism in abundance, and then it spontaneously is cut down, it is a huge shock to the system.
I heard an artist say once, and I just never forgot that, making art is like a bodily function. If I don't do it every single day, if I'm not creative every single day, I'm depressed. Even if it's fixing flowers in a vase or, in my home, putting a tchotchke somewhere, or decorating, cooking, anything.
Right.
But if I'm not doing something creative every single day, I'm lost.
So, you learn how to supplement your life and your lifestyle in ways that work, and you learn how to change your relationship with different aspects.
Were you single-minded about just focusing on dancing and rehearsing? Did you develop other interests and hobbies?
I would say curiosities at one point. I think, after working through my first major injury or two, I was fascinated with physical therapy as a possible second career. I still find it fascinating. But after shadowing a physical therapist of mine and realizing it was an awful lot of torn rotator cuffs and lower back pain, and people not doing their homework. There are a few dance physical therapists in town that do incredible work that honestly I think protected the longevity of my career. I could not have danced as long as I had without them, truly. But I find it endlessly fascinating, like how the human body works mechanically. But it didn't feel like the right fit. I started getting into choreography a lot. I think I'm still very drawn to physical storytelling.
So you're no longer choreographing?
No, I am. I do freelance still.
We're going to get into that in a minute. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Let's go there now. So, it's a cliche. Dancers who retire or can't dance anymore, they become choreographers. How much truth is that?
I don't think so. I don't think that's true at all. In fact, I feel like it's a vocabulary. I think some people are drawn to creating more than others, and I think that has no relationship.
When did you realize that was an interest of yours?
I kind of stumbled upon it. I always enjoyed, a little bit of improv and opportunities where we would get to in outreach capacities, choreograph somebody's story or investigate a theme for like a Spirit and Place festival or things. I always loved those opportunities, but I think it was, for me, there was a pivot when Brian Fonseca was looking for someone to choreograph Spring Awakening. And Laura Glover had passed that on to the DK dancers, and I jumped at the chance. And I also was like going through, I think, a heartbreak at the moment. And so I was very moved by a lot of the themes. And it was my very first attempt ever at choreographing musical theater. And I
remember that. Now it's all becoming clear. I remember when you made that shift. You came out of the gate. It was spectacular, Mariel.
Yeah, I definitely completely over choreographed most of what I did for 10 years. But
how do you mean you over choreographed?
Well, the dancer in me experiences music physically, so I just gravitated towards a lot of movement. But Brian was a phenomenal mentor in the theater space. He taught me how to step back and look at arcs. And I remember doing Spring Awakening, and I had choreographed this number beginning to end. And I showed up for rehearsal the following day, and he was like, "Oh, did I mention that the center of the stage rotates and it doesn't have a break?" And I was like, okay, give me 5 minutes. And so like learning how to pivot in the moment, learning how to use the dancers or actors in ways that are highlighting their very best, or having an itch and trying it on and seeing if it works. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but now you know.
That is such a classic Brian Fonseca story. God love him.
Yeah, it was.
You miss him?
I do. He was like Santa Claus. Especially because he loved Christmas so much. No. But he was just this happy Buddha of love and encouragement. He was cheering so hard for everyone around him that, yeah, I miss him.
You know, I had Suzanne Fleener has been on this podcast, my most recent interview, actually, and we just had such a great time sharing fond memories of Brian and the impact he's had on so many artists. And let me ask you if you agree with this. I truly believe that he was responsible for at least 2, if not 3 generations of educating this community and moving it forward.
Absolutely.
Artistically.
I think he had more faith in me than I probably had in myself.
You and lots of other people, though.
Yeah. I wouldn't have taken half of the chances had he not invited me to, you know.
Did you have the experience with him? I know I did. I acted in some of his productions, and it really intimidated me, number one, because it was Brian, that, you know, he didn't give much direction. He trusted you to come up with that. And if he didn't like it, he'd let you know. But, oh my God, that was so hard. But it did. It brought out, like you said before, like with David, you know, he worked similarly. You know, he wasn't an authoritarian, you know, and he really trusted his artists. Would you say that was true in your experience with him?
Yeah, I think working with him as a choreographer was like a little bit different of relationship, because I wasn't the instrument. It was more right. Through the, I don't know how to articulate that.
No, I understand. Yeah. Okay, so you're still choreographing, and you're freelance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We need to talk about Indy Dance Council, because that's, okay, tell me about it. I started seeing things on Facebook, as where we all get our news, right?
Sure.
Media.
So the Indy Dance Council was sort of born out of a passion project. I was collecting these thoughts and ideas and experiences that kept driving me towards wanting to find a solution or a way of organizing everything from getting text messages from friends. Where should I what dance school should I take my kid to? Or can you find a substitute, help me find a substitute for the Thursday night jazz class I teach? Or do you know where you can take adult hip hop or some of that? And then also just the sheer amount of time that it took me to discover a lot of cool, incredible dancers and dance performances and opportunities happening in the city that were happening all along, and I'd never heard about them, and I'd never come and cross paths with the information.
And there was no clearinghouse up to that.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
So I started just cataloging any dance that I could find happening anywhere in the city.
And aren't there like 92 dance studios in the area?
That's a good guess.
I heard that.
We have 81, I believe, on our database right now, but it's always changing, and there are more schools, for example, in like further suburbs or
Indiana. We're talking about.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's focused on the metro area, which is why we chose the word Indy versus Indiana or Indianapolis, and essentially, we've charged ourselves with three pillars. The first being how to organize how dance information is found and shared. The second is developing audience for all dance. And the third is creating pop-up events and programming that allow audience to engage with dance in new and different ways. So the primary program we run is in the summer, we do an Indy Dance Festival the third weekend of July, and it's 10 master classes in various styles. It's 4 free community classes. This year, one is for children, one is an adaptive dance class, one is a class for dancers 50 plus, and one is a open level freestyle class, which is a great entry point for anyone who's never had formal training but identifies as a dancer, for which I think that's every person, but everybody wiggles just a little bit. But then we have 2 panel discussions. We call them lunchtime conversations, where you can pack a lunch in between master classes and sit down and have a chat with other dancers in your community. This year, those will be the benefits of cross-training in different dance styles. And the second is going to be words from our elders, just creating some time and space for the dancers that shaped the scene and came before us, and what would they like to tell us.
Wow. That's pretty comprehensive.
And then we have 2 evening performances that you can see just a range of dance styles from, Dance Kaleidoscope, Indy Ballet, Cagnette, the 317 crew. This year we are going to, inside of the performance, there will be something called a 7 to Smoke, where 8 dancers of different street dance styles sort of battle it out live.
Do you have folkloric companies in the council?
We've not yet had a folkloric company.
Because with all the Latino immigrants, they're developing, you know?
Yeah, 100%. We've had reggaeton last year, and we've not yet had folklorical. I know sometimes flooring can be challenging because the Marley is not. You can't do folklorical shoes on the Marley, but we've had tap, and they throw down tap boards.
Gotcha.
So
is this a not-for-profit entity?
It is
Supported by donors, corporate, individual.
Correct. We are a nonprofit 501c3.
And you talked about Did you have colleagues who were early board members, or just a group of people like yourself who want to make?
So my partner in the Indy Dance Council is a woman named Sarah Farnsley. She is our managing director. Everything happens because of what we both are able to bring together. She has a focus towards the operations.
What's your title?
Artistic director.
Okay, all right. So you make a good team, it sounds like.
Yes, we have very complementary skill sets. She's a phenomenal communicator, phenomenal writer. I feel very lucky to have found
That's great.
a partner like her.
Well, we can't get away without talking about our relationship that went beyond my covering you as a journalist. As you know, I wear a lot of hats too. And One of them is my company, Klein and Alvarez Productions. And we hired you to choreograph Calder the Musical. Dustin wrote the music, I wrote the lyrics, and we co-wrote the book. And when we were putting together the creative team, you came to mind immediately. But we thought at the time, because we were so brand new and right out of the gate, well, she wouldn't do that for us. She's a star. She wouldn't be interested in our rinky-dink little musical. And yet you joined us, and, I look back on that, and what a great, great, wonderful creative experience it was. And you inspired us to really embrace the process, working with mostly community theater actors.
You guys gathered a group of very talented people, and there was a lot of very talented movers as well in that group of actors. It was, it was a wonderful production.
I can break the news here. We're bringing it back next year, a revival, but it'll be concert version.
That's incredible.
And I've already talked to you about it, so look for a text or a phone call, Mariel.
Will do.
I'm saying it on the air. But anyway, aside from that, that'll be next year, and we're already looking for a really cool. It's still in the works, but we're hoping it will actually be in an art museum setting.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so, it just makes sense, right? Anyway, so let's get back to the Dance Council. How can people get a hold of you, and what's your contact info?
You can follow us on Instagram at Indy Dance Council. Our website is indydancecouncil.org, and the website is there's a database there that lists all of the schools and companies in the area. You can search through them and filter by age, by style of dance. So if you're looking for a dance school, you can find it there. There's also information on physicians that treat dancers, on grant opportunities for dancers. There is information on the Indy Dance Festival coming up this summer, as well as we do a film night in January each year and other small events. So you can follow us on either of those places for up-to-date information about what we're up to. And you can always send us, if you have a dance event or something going on, you can send it to us either through Instagram or through email on the website, and we will do our best to connect you and to help promote it. The more people can know what is happening in dance in the city, the better chance they have to support it and engage with it and find it.
It goes without saying, I'm so grateful I have this platform. Again, clearinghouses, there's so little arts coverage. So you're doing a really valuable public service, and I'm thrilled that you could,
Thanks.
That you got the wherewithal, to make this happen. Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official newsletter for 15 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community. Thank you for joining me on the aisle. Please subscribe to my podcast, and if you want to hear previous episodes, find them on the All Indiana Podcast Network, or listen to them wherever you get your podcasts. This is Tom Alvarez.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.